With all of us getting older, it seems like in this club after today's announcements, I think this is a very appropriate speaker. Evan DuBro is with Our Family Home. I know a lot of us here have family members that have fallen to the wonderful world of dementia, Alzheimer's, and other problems. He has developed a new way of caring for these individuals at homes in our own community. I myself have one near my house. I have to admit, when it first moved near my house, I was very skeptical and wasn't sure I wanted it. However, they proved to be excellent neighbors. They are quiet. They keep the grounds up. And I think it is a new and progressive way of showing how to take care of our elderly. Evan is from Dayton originally, went to Arizona State University, and moved back here to start his business. At this time, I'd like to introduce Evan DuBro.
Thank you. I'm going to try to speak without the microphone. Can everyone hear okay, or use it? Okay. All right. I'll use it. Actually, I come here on behalf of, as a volunteer for the local Alzheimer's chapter. I wear several roles and hats with the organization as a volunteer. But the reason really why I volunteer and why I come and what I start my business for is because it's personal. As a young teenager, my mother in the early 80s brought her parents in from Florida who both had Alzheimer's disease. Didn't know anything about the disease, didn't know how to treat the disease, didn't know how to even deal with the individual with the disease. All the way to my mother who passed away next week will be 2 years of her death, where she died at the age of 73, battling it for 10 years with the disease. So what I come out here to do is because it's personal. It's personal what I do for a business, but it's more personal coming out on behalf of what I do today as part of the Speakers Bureau, where I go out in the communities and really teach what is dementia, what is Alzheimer's, what are the myths, what are the stereotypes. But one thing I want to say as I always speak and start to speak with individuals is I want you to promise me one thing. That as I speak and go through this, you do not self-diagnose yourself. You don't go through and say, oh my gosh, I do this, I have it, and walk out of here saying, I'm doomed. What I want you to do is to listen, to look at the facts, and if there's something that I teach you today that you may feel that you have a challenge with, you need to speak up to your primary doctor and go from there. But ultimately, as we go through this disease, it is very hard to speak about it, but it's even more hard to listen about it. How many people in this room either have a loved one, a friend, or someone they know that has been diagnosed with a form of dementia or Alzheimer's? Look at that. When I started speaking for the organization 7 years ago in Columbus, I probably would only have 20% of the people in the room raise their hands. 6 years later, I have more than, I would say, 75% in this room. What it means is it's a disease that's an epidemic coming through our country. And what people think it is an old person disease, it is not an old person's disease. Last week, I met an individual who was 42 years old who's been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. I constantly see people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. But when I really say it's not an old person disease, I say it's a young person disease because the young people are going to be dealing with taking care of the older people who get this disease. I want to say it's a societal disease, and it's a disease where there is no cure, and this one really hurts to say, but there's never been a survivor. We have survivors of Ebola, we have survivors of other diseases, but there's never been one survivor who's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's in the United States or around the world. For me, it was a horrible time going through my grandparents and my own personal mother, where I professionally got involved with taking care of individuals with dignity and respect, and I'll leave that for later, but I want to get down to what we passed out, the pamphlets. You pass out the other stuff, teachers. Statistics alone. 1 out of 3 individuals in the United States will die of Alzheimer's disease. And the reason that it's going up is because now primary docs or not primary docs, but the hospitals and doctors are saying now people will die of Alzheimer's. Before, they died of a heart attack, they died of this, they died of that because of the disease. But now they can say the disease is the cause of death. 1 out of every 3. 1 out of every 6 women over the age of 65 will be diagnosed with the disease. And pretty soon, 7 out of every 10 people over the age of 85 will be diagnosed with some form of dementia. Those are staggering numbers. Staggering numbers to think that your loved one may not recognize who you are anymore. And it's a long journey. If you know friends or family have been through it, it can be 2 to 20 years. That's not only tough on our own self and our loved ones, but financially it can be a big burden for many families. So as we go through this again, the statistics, even in Ohio, another hat that I wear is I'm the national ambassador for this local chapter. I work for Congressman T-Berry. I meet with him every 3 months, educate him about the bills that are out there, and teach him about the numbers. Alone, in the 2014, we had 210,000 people in the state of Ohio diagnosed. They really say you double that number because people don't get diagnosed, like my own mother. I'm going to bring in a lot of examples of my mom. My mom and I were the only ones to talk about this disease in our family. She wanted it kept behind closed doors. And the taboo of having someone with the disease, not talking about it in public, and the embarrassment of my mother, who was very social, who quit attending her social events such as this, gave up her hobbies, and lost many of her friends because we as a family hid it. One thing I want to say now as an advocate wearing that hat is we're no longer hiding it. We no longer like to joke about it. It's a serious disease. It impacts many people, and there's light jokes that people say, but I don't listen to that anymore, and I actually don't condemn people using that language. What we have to do is we have to find a cure. And the only way we're going to find a cure is to have the NIH provide more money. Alzheimer's now is the 7th leading cause of death, and it's the 10th funded disease out there for research. The numbers are going to be staggering. It's going to be moving up to probably the top 2 or 3 deaths, as I said, in the country. And if we don't do something now to find a cure, we're in trouble. So as Mike passed out, I need your help. I need your assistance with many other families to fill out that card, bring it back up to me, and give it to our Congress. As Congressman T-Berry tells me every time I see him, until more people say they want a cure and more people want funding, the politicians are not going to change their mind. So every card that you can fill out and give me, for everything that you can speak about this disease, will be beneficial to the many families that I serve every day in my own business, my own family, and many other families who have had people pass. So please, be a champion or an advocate for myself and families. Fill out that card, or you can go to the national website and they have a form letter, put in your zip code, and it sends it off. So let's get down and learn about basics of dementia. A lot of people say to me, what's the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia? Here's a very good question. We use the words really interchangeably. But however, dementia is a progressive disease that affects your cognitive abilities that will affect your activities of daily living. Currently, there's about 72, changes every month, 72 forms of dementia. Alzheimer's is just one form. To be very simple, not be scientific, there are mainly 3 forms of dementia classifications. 10% of people who have dementia will get what we call neurological dementia. The majority of those are ALS, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, any disease that follows the progressive decline of neurologically, you will develop dementia at some point of that stage. The next one is the one that we have the greatest hope is what we call vascular dementia. We have programs, if you're interested, in the national organization called Healthy Brain. They have now proven with matrices this past year that cardiovascular, as we know, is pretty basic understanding, no rocket science, that if you take care of yourself, you prevent strokes, you prevent heart disease, you'll prevent diabetes. 20% of people who develop the dementia will develop vascular dementia. My grandfather had probably vascular dementia as we look back. The largest segment, which is about 65 to 75%, is Alzheimer's. What happens is if you do have an issue, you go to the primary doctor, they'll do some testing. As I was telling Mike here, how many people here know that doctors do not get reimbursed for any testing for Alzheimer's disease? The doctors that do it do have their own will, out of their own pocket, and do not get reimbursed. There's actually an act out now that Congressman T-Ray signed on for me, where Medicare will reimburse primary doctors to do the testing. But imagine that. The majority of doctors don't even test because they don't get reimbursed. It's a shame. So how do you know you have Alzheimer's? We'll go down the whole list. Dun, 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 dun. Drank too much. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, we have somebody who's under depression, which is what we call reversible dementia. Prescriptions, if you're taking multiple, my mind is foggy. I've taken this, it can be reversed. Alzheimer's, they go through the whole list and say, we don't know. 8 years ago, and prior to that, the only way we knew of Alzheimer's was through an autopsy, looking at the brain. But 6 years ago, there was a fluke that happened with a PET scan that they actually now can watch the brain decline with the plaquing in the brain and the parts of the brain through a PET scan, which has been a huge, huge breakthrough for scientists now to understand what areas are affected. So to go back, those are the differences. Some are reversible and many aren't. But if they don't know why you're having decline in your cognitive ability, they call it Alzheimer's disease. My mother suffered for 10 years with the disease. She was a case study, went through just like the book says. We did not perform an autopsy. We never got a PET scan on her. But what we do at the association and what we do nationally is if you know of somebody or even yourself or others who has it early on, we need them to get in. Don't be like my mother who refused to go to the doctor. Why? Because if you do, we have the ability now to learn more and more. One thing we're very fortunate in Columbus, Ohio is we probably have the best memory disorders researcher and doctors in the country at Ohio State. You might have read they tried a new experiment where they put in a brain probe into a lady who I actually personally know that comes to the Alzheimer's Association and works with Congressman T-Berry about stimulating parts of the brain for her memory. Dr. Shari is in charge of that down at the OSU Memory Disorders Clinic. So we're moving quickly, but if you do know somebody and they do that, we need people to go in. We have to. We have to figure out what's causing it and try to find the drugs to find the cure. So as we open this up, ask questions anytime. Again, we're not here to diagnose. We're here to learn. And we're here to make sure that we walk out of here knowing more than we did when we walked in. And second of all, we need to be a champion to go out there to find a cure for this disease. A devastating disease for everyone. Not only affects the spouse or the children, it affects grandchildren, friends, neighbors, people in your house of worships. So if you turn to the first page, what is Alzheimer's disease? There's a definition in there. A lot of this stuff I'm not going to be able to have time to go through and specifically talk about because of our timing and respect your time today. But you can always take this back, and also on the very back is the alz.org, which has tons of information these days about the disease. First thing, what are the warning signs? What are the myths about the warning signs? The first one that I'm going to talk about as we went through is when memory loss is a warning sign. Most people know that they notice their slow thinking or problems or retaining it. I noticed my mother right away with her handwriting. My mother was a 4th grade teacher, had beautiful, beautiful penmanship. I lived in Arizona for a long time. My mom would send me cards on a regular basis, and I started noticing her penmanship going down. That's the first time I ever had the conversation coming back, and I will tell you today, if I don't cry right now, it was the hardest discussion I ever had with my mother. Because I knew about the disease, I specialized. I was a nursing home administrator in 1993, specializing in memory care because of my grandparents' influence on me. We go in and help the elderly and go through this. So little changes that I noticed. Then her checkbook. I used to hear my dad, she can't even keep her checkbook straight now. Another little thing that was common that she did all the time. But possible causes of memory problems include depression, like I said, medication side effects, excess alcohol use, thyroid problems, poor diet, vitamin deficiencies, certain infections. Those are all reversible. So if you are having some issues, it can be reversed. There is hope. On the bottom of the page is something that I really like is your brain is an organ that's going to age and you're going to slow. It's not going to be able to work like you did in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, or whatever age you're talking about. But on the bottom you see here, what is the difference? Signs of Alzheimer's and dementia, we're on page 4. And what is typically age-related? Poor judgment and decision-making. Typical age-related is making a bad decision once in a while. And when they really talk about poor judgment, a lot of it is financial that we see. We see people making bad decisions going to the casino. They're giving out every donation there is when people call. They give away money. They are now doing stuff that doesn't make sense anymore in their whole lives. Someone who's made bad decisions their whole life, they didn't make bad decisions. But making poor decisions. Another one is an inability to manage a budget. I already brought that up. Missing a monthly payment here and there is something common. Losing track of the date or season compared to forgetting which day it is and remembering it later. One theme that you're going to see over and over when I read these about what is age-related is you always recall it at some point. How many people in here cannot remember that actor or actress and it drives you crazy and all of a sudden 1 in the morning, there it is! I'm going to call Betty, but I better wait. Well, maybe she's thinking about it too. Or you're there, you're like, oh, I got it! Your keys. Oh, gosh, where did I put those keys? People with Alzheimer's usually put the keys in their freezer or somewhere else, or the remote controls and that. But you're able to say, oh, I know where my keys are. They're here. Okay, I got it. That's a big clue of remember that you remember it later. Difficult in having conversations. Probably the hardest thing for my own mother, being a school teacher, teaching kids English, being part of that is when she couldn't speak no longer with her friends or people in public. She started withdrawing. Another sign that I notice a lot with individuals like my mother, my grandmother, is they withdrew from their social events. Someone who's very social and you don't see them anymore. They don't hold the conversation on very well with you anymore. They can't find those words. Misplacing things, like I said, you're going to lose stuff time to time, but trying to misplace and you never see them as an issue. On the next page, and President, let me know, when I get the yank, please. I'm going to go through pretty quickly on here is memory loss that disrupts daily life, and you'll see on below what is age-related. Challenges in planning and solving problems. Difficulty completing familiar tasks at home or at work. Confusion with time or place. Trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships. Another thing I knew about my mom is her balance. My mother was an avid golfer and tennis player, but her spatial started getting confused. She didn't thought the table was much closer. A lot of people think with Alzheimer's that when they fall, they don't know where the chair is, but really they don't know where they can't see the chair. It starts affecting parts of your brain when you see the spatial. Driving into a parking lot, spot, they miscue on where it is. And I would say you don't want to be around because they will hit your car. Not knowing. A little tidbit about the car. The worst thing you could ever have to any human being that I've seen or individual is to take away their own pride and dignity is take away the keys. And one thing that I say to individuals if they have a loved one who has this and the driving is becoming difficult, do not prolong it. You have people's lives at stake that are driving and also for your own liability. If they are diagnosed with Alzheimer's and they continue to drive and they hit somebody, you will be liable. More than you know of. However, at Ohio State, they have what we call the driving class. And what I tell with a lot of people is, as a loved one, never correct, never tell them, didn't I just tell you that? Don't you know that? All that's going to do in our field is cause a trigger. It's going to cause them to feel horrible about themselves. It's either going to cause anger, it's going to cause resentment. Even though you want to do it, bite your lip and then go scream outside later. But never, never tell them or correct them. Another thing that I teach a lot of people is have the doctor do it. They will listen. I bet you every individual in here at some point, we listen to our doctors. Our doctor's words, we follow. 3 minutes, oh boy. I really got to get the important stuff in. Have the doctor say that they need to go down and take the driving course. Then they take the driving course, they fail it, and Ohio State takes the keys away from the doctor. Not you, not anybody else. If you notice, that have the doctor be that in-between person. What? Number 6, number 7, number 8, number 9, number 10, I'll let you read in there. A lot of it is change of mood and personality is another one. You'll notice a lot of behaviors on that. Yes, sir?
I want you to stop and take a few questions.
Okay. One last thing. Those are the warning signs. In here, I'm going to just go through the pamphlet real quick. You'll see how it affects the brain. You'll see causes. You'll see the different stages of the disease. And this is the specific stages, so you can see where someone is, or maybe they have that. Also on your table is what we call a care card. The association has free services through the generosity of donations to provide services to individuals. So you'll see out there they got a helpline. We have educational services. We have caregiver services. We have they'll go inside people's houses and do the testing and ask how to make the house better and to make it safe. They also have a helpline. You call it any time, 24 hours a day. The other part on that. Questions? I know I've sped up real quick. I usually talk about 90 minutes with groups that I go out about this disease. Yes, sir?
You did mention supplements could be reversible. Could you give us some ideas?
Well, yes. What I was saying with the supplements is sometimes you take too many with prescriptions and it makes your mind. So if the doctor realizes these supplements are causing more damage to your brain and cognition, then they'll come off. But they'll look at all those medications and supplements. I always get a question, what about luminosity? To work on the brain. What about reading? Can I do something to keep it off? Well, research shows no. It's healthy. They know the only tax for a healthy brain is to eat right and exercise. That's proven. But all these luminosities and everything with the brain, no, it will not stop the disease. Matter of fact, I've seen the most brilliant people come down with the disease and who read and researched in that. So there is no cognition. So save your money on luminosity unless you like to do it. Yes, sir?
Is there any correlation between ADHD and Alzheimer's disease?
Not that I know of. The closest relationship they're noticing with Alzheimer's is actually certain forms of what we call frontal lobe or Lewy bodies, which to me is the hardest disease of all the dementias. It's losing the frontal lobe of your brain and it's being attacked. They notice that with Parkinson's a lot. They're noticing a lot of relationship between Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and different parts of the brain, but nothing with ADHD. I've never heard anything on that factor. I've heard everything from marijuana use will help to luminosity to this and that. None of it's been proven. The only thing that's been proven again is living a healthy life and exercise. Yes,
are there any ethnic groups that suffer from it more than others?
Great question. Actually, in there, the African American culture or society has the highest forms of dementia just because of their rates of diabetes.
Okay.
Alzheimer's-wise, it goes across the board. Socioeconomically, intelligence, upbringing, nothing. The only thing it does is healthy brain. So the African Americans do have higher diabetes and sure. Yes, President.
Driving, and I guess as a policy question, are there any states or perhaps other countries that for drivers past a certain age, you have to go in and take cognition tests, that sort of thing?
And they try it in different areas, and I believe Ohio has when you go in. What they're checking is the basics. Unless you drive, can you see? Can you do that? They're not giving what we call a mental status exam of that nature. The main thing is the primary docs are in the front lines these days, and they're becoming, in the last decade, much, much better at this disease than they ever had before. And actually, a lot of the primary docs have noticed because of the aging tsunami of our country, they're becoming more and more related to aging-related health issues, and this is one of them. So that question, I'd have to get more specific, but I don't know that they strictly do it for cognition testing for that disease. I think they've talked about it. I've heard of one to do it. But there's been a big fight back on it. Yes, sir?
These family homes, how much does that cost?
Oh, well, you led into my business real quick. Well, again, like I said, it's personal. I was a nursing home administrator, and I realized the way we took care of our seniors, mainly our Alzheimer's, is we put them in a secured unit with 40 other people, lock it down, and it's undignified. At our family home, I created the 4 principles of care that I'm doing. I have 8 homes here in Columbus. I have 2 in Dublin. Going to be adding a 3rd one in Dublin. You might have read me in the paper or seen me in the news at some point. Every community has fought me, but as Mike said, every community comes back and starts delivering cookies and being part of our neighborhood. Some don't fight me. Our family home is all-inclusive. We do $200 a day, which is usually the average rate. We have the attentive care of 5 people. We are licensed by the state of Ohio to do our care, which surveyors come in, ombudsmen come in. But we have a maximum of 5 individuals by law that can live in the house, and I have 2 care providers taking care of them. Nowhere in this city or this state you can find anybody who matches that caregiver. That's what I put in there, attentive care. How many people take care of how many people? Very basic. Like I said, I've been doing this since 1993, working in long-term care. And every big company that I've worked for and seen out there, cut staff. Next thing you know, the national average for memory care is 1 staff. A caregiver will take care of 12 to 15 people for that same price. And I don't want to use my competitors' names here. But we do it in a dignified manner. And really what the homes are, sir, the homes are therapeutic. This concept, in a lot of my research, the Japanese put all their people, all their elderly inside homes. They don't put them in institutions. The country of the Netherlands, which you'll read about maybe 60 Minutes, the Dementia village, where they're experimenting on a self-contained village to let people just go and live in. They're very progressive. They don't house any of their seniors in institutions anymore. They put them in group homes. But really the therapeutic event of seeing this disease and looking out the window and seeing the kids come home on evening streets, which where we are in Worthington, they love it. They love to see people mow the grass. They love to go outside. They like to do a lot of that. So our family home, if you're interested, which I hope everybody is, you can grab a brochure I have up here. I really don't like to talk about it. I'm here really to educate about the disease. But we are a wonderful option that people aren't aware of. And we do great. We actually have a waiting list for our house. I think I have 1 room open in all Columbus. And we're also in Cincinnati. So, any more questions? Yes, young lady. You can just put them up here. There's a sticker for you to wear if you want to be a champion. The last thing that I want to end, because the president's kicking me over here, is there is hope. We are going to find a cure for this disease. I'm going to find a cure and be part of this disease. But the only way that I can do it is to help with everybody in this room to tell their representative, we need more money. Again, as the 7 leading causes of death in the United States, 6 of the diseases are in a decline of the mortality rate. There's only 1 disease that's a rocket ship at a 90-degree angle, is Alzheimer's. This is not an old person's disease. This is a societal disease. There will be an epidemic by the year 2020 if we don't do something today. And I will speak on behalf of my generation, who will be taking care of the most children ever born in any century. To the children who were the least born of any century, my generation. We need help. We need to make sure we're going to find ways to take care of our elderly, and we've got to find a cure. It's very costly. Yes, sir?
Do you work with Earl Bruce with us?
Yes. Actually, Earl Bruce has visited our homes. I work closely with his daughter, Lynn, who owns Buckeye Home Medical. She refers, we use her. In our homes, we do personal care, but we can bring in all the medical. We have doctors that come and visit, we have podiatrists, we have nurses, we have therapists. Anything that you can find in any institution, we can bring inside the house, so the individual never has to go out. But Earl Bruce, I'm I part of his foundation, working with him. And what he does is give grants to Dr. Shari at Ohio State to find research. I just read a thing that we're going to give out $250 billion to research Ebola. The Alzheimer's Association, nationally through research, only gets $200 million. $250 million is what's spent on Alzheimer's disease. Fill out those cards, tell people we need to contact so we can get $1 billion too to help this. Anything else? Again, we're not here to self-diagnose. I will stay for some minutes if you'd like to speak with me either about the disease or if you'd like to know more about my business. But you can always go on it in our website, ourfamilyhomeinc.com, and you can learn more about my own journey. I hope you felt my passion for this disease because it's personal. It's made me go grayer than I ever expected in my life. Now I'm just losing it. But as we say, be a champion and let's get hope, because we're going to find a cure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Evan. And Evan, before you sit down, I just wanted to mention that we express our appreciation for every presentation, including your fine talk this afternoon, by donating a book in your name to one of the school libraries where we tutor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Evan.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.